Hi everyone, I'm Amy, this is my partner Maggie, and this is a little bit of a different video from us. Unfortunately, we're making a challenging video about the recent review that we were meant to put out for Viticulture World, which is an expansion to one of our favorite games, Viticulture. In fact, if you watch our channel, you will know that we love Viticulture. It is probably, without calling it, in our top 10 games. And so, needless to say, we were very excited about getting an early release copy of Viticulture World, which has been with us but under embargo. This is part of Stonemaier Games' process to then drop our review on a very specific date. However, we won't be dropping a review of Viticulture World yet, and this video is designed to explain a little bit about the why.
I'm going to need your help because it's quite a... Sorry. Okay, so... Sorry. So in this expansion, there's different areas of the world that are featured. And one of the areas is South America, which is where I'm from. And so you can imagine how excited I was to check out that pack and look at, how does this play and what does this add to the game. And part of it is it's meant to highlight the history in terms of winemaking in that region. And so as I opened the pack, the first thing that I saw was there was a note about, and I'm going to be paraphrasing, but essentially it came the process of viticulture, or the people that kind of brought viticulture to South America. Essentially, there was a big cost to the native people, and it sort of had this disclaimer of we do not honor the methods that they used in order to kind of get to where they got to. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. That's a good thing to acknowledge, because this is exactly what we want to see more and more of in games. We want to see more awareness, more being more mindful of the impact that different things had. But then as I'm going through it, the way that it works is there's personality cards featured that you can kind of leverage for different abilities. And so as I'm going through the personalities, I see two of them are very much the classic kind of warrior, the conquistador shield and armor that they would wear. And I'm like, oh, this is weird because, this is like you immediately kind of, there's an immediate flag in your mind when you see that. It's kind of like seeing the armor of the invaders and kind of go, well, what light are they going to be painted on? And then looking at the name going, these are not just any two random, people that happen to be there. These were two of the worst people who almost single-handedly were responsible for the almost eradication, pretty much, of the Aztec Empire and the Incas, genocide of Incas. So these are incredibly problematic personalities, or incredibly, these are awful people, and that we do not want to be honoring in any good light. And so the next thought that comes to my mind is going, oh, one, why are they here? And then, well, what do you get to, how do you use them? And the way that they were implemented originally is that you could leverage them for a benefit, essentially for a net benefit. And so again, as a themer, kind of going, this is the equivalent of going, if I'm there and I'm leveraging these personalities, it's me saying, well, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I'm going to turn a blind eye to what you did because I can get a benefit from leveraging your connections. And that just felt... So I think what was really going through my mind was one, the blind side, because obviously, of all games, Stonemaier games, I was very careful with, or would try to be very careful with the approach of games. So the last place that I would expect to find anything problematic is, Stonemaier game. Not only that, Viticulture being a game that we love so much. And so first is that sort of that disbelief of what, why are they in here in the first place? And then why are they in here in a somewhat positive light? Because then there's on the one hand, you're saying we don't honor their methods, but then at the same time, it's like you're kind of saying one thing, but then kind of doing another, in that you're honoring their name, you're honoring their countenance, like their face, and their legacy in a way, and then you're also in the gameplay, you're allowing to play them for a benefit. So if I know no better, I don't know these personalities. My takeaway message is, so these were some historical figures, and the net benefit, like the net effect, is that I get a benefit from leveraging them or using them. I think part of the reason why it's so painful. Sorry.
Okay. Do you want to stop?
No, sorry. I know this is going to be a very difficult and annoying video to watch, because I'm like trying to win my way through it.
No, you're doing great.
Sorry. It's because my entire life, growing up in South America, that's what happens. These people always got the spotlight. They were always shown in this sort of sanitized way, where even if we kind of make reference to the horrible things that they did, it's sort of just kind of mentioned, but then very quickly brushed off. And so that continues a narrative of this is fine. Like, this is fine to just sort of like, oh yeah, that kind of happened, but it's no big deal. And it's like, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. Especially like at the moment, with what's happening in the world, we can all see what invasion looks like. It's not pretty, it's not pleasant, and so much of it is so senseless. There is, no need for it, or the motivation behind it is wealth or power or something that's like, what? So to have these figures be in any way in a game, unless, and again, obviously this is my very personal, very passionate personal experience about this, I don't want to see these people in any kind of positive light. If they're put in a game, it needs to be very clear what their role is, and not a, and again, it's like, and that would be if it's like a political type of game, not, not like I said, I'm gonna throw it in there. So I guess this is, I think for me, the bigger part of this is, I hope that this is a bigger lesson or learning opportunity for all of us. One, because I didn't realize how much it would impact me to see that card, like see those cards like that in a game. So that was even a surprise for me, going, oh my gosh, like once we've stopped saying, hey, that's fine, just brush it off, I was like, well, no, that's not fine. Like you that was genocide. Like you eradicated two entire cultures, essentially. Then it's like, now it's like you can't really look away anymore. And so it's important that, yes, when we're creating games, that we get cultural consultants in place, and yes, that we are very careful with, how we paint people. But then, yes, if we put disclaimers and things like that, making sure that any inclusion actually follows through the gameplay. Like, what's the moral of playing? When you play this game, what takeaway message do you get? What's the impact? So I think this is a way to safeguard all other South Americans that, would have been impacted or affected by it. So I think that was my main sort of thing.
And not just South Americans, although I will say, I think it's compounded by the fact that in this game you get to see these continents represented, and it's exciting because you want to see yourself reflected in the game, and then to open the South America pack and see non-South Americans who were actually quite terrible people being the representatives of South America. I think that is awful. And I obviously, first of all, I'm no historian, but also I obviously don't have Maggie's cultural background. And so for me, a way of thinking about it was just thinking about any awful person in history, thinking about the Adolf Hitlers or the Osama bin Ladens. If you opened a country pack and those were the people that were representing your country, have to think about how easy would it be for you to turn a blind eye to their entire history in order to gain a benefit in a game. And worse still, if you don't know who these people are, then seeing them just paint them in a certain light that is completely different to their history. And also it means that when someone goes to design a game again, they might think, let's put that same character in.
Yeah.
And it just perpetuates their legacy being rewritten.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter in this case the contribution that they made to winemaking. It didn't need to be set in this time period. It didn't need to be.
There's no one specific. So it's like So the other thing is, why not, if we have an opportunity to highlight or give a stage or a spotlight to personalities, why not highlight the personalities that actually that we want to role model now? So the ones that were actually up against all odds and did amazing things, or people who are from diverse backgrounds. And yes, it's going to be a lot more difficult to find them. Guess why? Because they have the bullies have actually gotten the spotlight of history the entire time. It doesn't mean that those people weren't there. They were just not. It's harder to find people writing about them because, well, who cares? They're kind of the nobodies, or they're the annoying people of the time, essentially.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, well, if we continue that, then that's never going to be corrected. So it's, I guess this is kind of like it has to start somewhere. And again, my hope with this is for it to be a learning experience for all of us.
Yeah.
And
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's
I
okay.
just wanted to talk about, I guess, what happened after Maggie had this experience. So actually, as you can see, Maggie was incredibly upset to the point where we had to stop playing Viticulture World, but also it was, 24 hours of Maggie being quite visibly upset, going through like being angry, being disappointed in the game, but just genuinely very sad. And I had to watch that and experience it, obviously comfort her, and I was upset for her. And she was not in a position to kind of decide what we could do next. So it was just a very challenging situation. And our two options for what we could do was, we could have reviewed the game. We could have just waited until the embargo was over and drop a review of the game that would highlight this part of the game and say that it wasn't for us for whatever reason. The difficulty in putting out a review for this game would be, this is one element of the game that we really obviously dislike, to the point where Maggie can no longer play it. Does that mean that it's a terrible game and we won't review it? I'm not sure, because if we do review the other parts of the game, isn't that the same as ignoring
turning a blind eye?
We're turning a blind eye to something so horrible, which is kind of like what we're talking about with these characters. So we're in this position where we really would publish a quite negative review about this game. The only thing about that is that won't change anything.
No, what does it accomplish?
Sure, it accomplishes maybe a few less people might buy it. We might face quite a bit of backlash. Jamie Stagmeyer probably gets some backlash as well. So these were the options running through our head, but ultimately it wouldn't change the game. And so the thing that we wanted to do is reach out to Jamie directly. And so I sent Jamie an email without Maggie on it, explaining a little bit about what had happened and how upset Maggie was. And to Jamie's credit, he emailed us back straight away and asked us to jump on a call. And so we did. And this is kind of exactly what Maggie has just said to you, is what she said to Jamie, who very quickly went into, like, well, how can we fix this? Because what had happened is, Jamie had engaged a cultural consultant. The cultural consultant had indeed flagged that these two characters needed to be treated very carefully, if at all, and also they couldn't be linked to any kind of positivity, or had to be very careful how you painted them or the light that you painted them. And in getting that feedback back, Jamie had put in the warning in the game we explained to him why we felt that wasn't adequate, and he did hear us loud and clear. And in fact, what is happening now is there are 2 replacement cards, as well as an explanation, that are going to be in a separate pack of cards, so replacement cards that are going to ship with every copy of the game. Unfortunately, given the timing, they weren't able to change the cards that are going to be in the game for the first printing, but every retail copy and every early order of this game will now come with replacement cards featuring a completely different set of people who did contribute positively to the winemaking history of South America.
Yeah.
So that is happening, and that has happened. And so then the next question is, well, why are we making this video? There's kind of a change has been put in motion. Why make Maggie come on here and talk through this again, which is obviously very painful? And for me, the answer is, we have a platform, a small platform, sure, but we want to encourage people to speak up more, because we're consumers of games. We are by no means experts on cultural representation, but what we can speak to and what you can speak to is your truth, and your experience, and things that are, problematic in games. We will always listen. And there has been a lot of things that have happened in the gaming world where we are seeing progress in so many areas. In fact, cultural consultant wouldn't have been a thing a few years ago, and now obviously it's becoming much more commonplace. So we wanted to make a video so that you as the viewer feel as though there is someone in your corner listening. We are listening, and we will help amplify your voice as much as we can. The other part of it is, if you are a publisher or a designer, we're making this video because these things are important. They're important to your players. If you put things like this in your games, you are causing a reaction like Maggie's reaction here, and I don't think anybody wants to hurt people.
No.
Anyone is maliciously trying to upset players. In fact, it's the exact opposite. We're trying to create a joyful space where people can come together and play and be together and not have to deal with kind of these kind of topics when they sit down expecting to have a good time.
Well, and because, more and more it's like people say, it's just a game. It's like, but not games are an extension of our lives, and they represent so many of the things that, we do, how we act and how we are in life. And they're actually, they're a vehicle. They're a vehicle for narratives. They're a vehicle to either maintain the status quo, and some people defend it, at all costs. And then they're also a vehicle for change, particularly really positive change. So why not use it, for those, in that way, essentially.
Yeah, and so you will be able to reference a post in the Designer Diaries by Jamie Stegmaier that talks through exactly what happened, and I guess the reflection that he went through in making these replacement cards. Obviously, it's not been easy for anyone, and we want to avoid this happening before it gets to this stage, before us as reviewers get our hands on these games. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for listening. I want to say a huge thank you to Maggie, because I'm so proud of you for doing what is really difficult. And it is really difficult. We thought about not doing anything at all, honestly. And this is really hard. And because we have this platform, there was no choice but to be able to talk about this. And we hope that it contributes to having better game experiences and more thoughtful design choices.
And I want to say that, I'm actually, even though it's a painful process, I feel like it's a necessary part of the growth or whatever next stage we're going to be going into in terms of, making games, making sure that, games are done the best possible way. And no, we're not always, going to get it right. But again, being able to have the conversations and understand and learn from them. And I also, I do want to say, that's been something that Jamie has done pretty well, very, very well, in terms of being able to
listen and correct, but we want these mistakes to not happen in the first place. All you can ask is for people to have empathy and to be able to hear when people do speak up.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that, as we're going through this, it's like in risk management, we call it kind of like if you think of like slicing cheese, like you don't want the cheese with the holes for all the holes to line up and then things fall through the cracks. So the whole idea is like, what are the preventative steps that you can put in place to prevent, things from happening from getting to the point where it's like, oh, how did this not get caught earlier? So it becomes, again, it becomes a learning or a lesson or a learning experience for all of us in terms of what are the other things that we can do, what, who can be involved at what stages to make sure that we have the best end result.
So the next question is, will we review Viticulture World? We absolutely will, but we refuse to do that until we get those replacement cards. It's just not a game that can hit our table without having upsetting effects with the cards as they currently stand. So our review will be a little bit delayed. Please bear with us, and thank you for listening. Thank you for watching this video, and we really appreciate your support as always. But otherwise, we'll be back soon. Bye for now.
Bye.